Let me rewind the tape for 1 second. I want to talk about a prophecy in the first, like, 2, 3 chapters in Daniel. I can't remember. I think it's chapter 2. Actually, it starts in chapter 1. It goes into chapter 2. Daniel sees a All right, Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king at the time, has a dream, and in the dream he sees a statue. And if you want, contact me, and I'll go over this dream with you, and I'll break it down. But for the sake of this teaching, I just want to get to the main point behind what I'm saying. So each body part in the vision that Daniel sees represents a world empire. Okay, now just another unnecessary thing that really don't need to know, but I'm going to tell you anyways, is that when I have a history degree, so some of my history is going to bleed into this a little bit. But Tower of Babel, right? Genesis, Noah, God destroys the earth. It's destroyed with a flood. Noah survives. Noah's descendants become numerous. They inhabit the land of Shinar. They began to build the Tower of Babel. Now, at the time the Tower of Babel built, all the world was one nation, one language. After the Tower of Babel and everybody couldn't speak the language anymore, everybody branched off and became their own nation, their own people groups, okay? Up until the time a man named Nebuchadnezzar came around, the king of Babylon, the world was factionalized. Everybody had their own little kingdoms. Now you had some kingdoms, the Davidic kingdom, during David and Solomon's reign, they ruled over everything. I mean, they ruled over the Philistines, the Arabian, everybody paid tribute to them. You have the Hittite Empire prior to David. The Hittite Empire was huge, but you really had no empire, no world kingdom that ruled the entire world, like the known world. Once Nebuchadnezzar steps on the page, bang, he receives a title. God calls him in the book of Jeremiah. I believe it's Jeremiah, but I'm sure it's Jeremiah. He calls him, he said, you're a king, not the king of kings, but you are a king of kings. Like you rule over pretty much like the majority of kings in the whole known world at the time. And the reason why this is significant, because this is the backdrop for the statue, right? So he sees the head is Nebuchadnezzar. Now, afterwards, he's going to see different body parts, and I'm just going to go through real quick. But the empire that takes over Nebuchadnezzar's empire are the Persians and the Medians. They take over Nebuchadnezzar's empire. And what happens after they take it over? Oh, yeah. So they take it over, and then they continue for hundreds of years. Esther, the book of Esther comes out of Ahasuerus. He was a descendant of a king named Darius. So these are actually biblical kings that you see in the Bible. Darius, the book of Daniel. You also see him in I believe Nehemiah. You might even see him in Ezra. Ezra's a great book. I love Ezra. So these are all biblical kings that you do see, right? But this is the kingdom of Medes and Persians. Now, there's a few scriptures that are actually going to refer to the king of Grecia. That's the book of, most of them are in the book of Daniel. I think there's one in the book of Zechariah. But the one that I like the most is in Daniel, because it's very specific that after the Persian Empire is done away with, the Greek Empire will come. Right? That's Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great takes over the Median Empire, the Median and Persians. Those are the two ethnic groups that dominated that empire at the time. He takes it over. He does a great job. Then he dies early in his 30s, something. I forgot. Different theories how he got killed. His kingdom gets divided unto the four winds, whatever, just different generals take over different sections of kingdom. He had a son, but they killed his son. This isn't Bible, this is history. You don't even know it, but it's good to know. They killed his son, and then his kingdom was divided. Now, his kingdom, though, the Greek kingdom, even though it wasn't unified, it was a Greek-speaking people. This is, to this day, this is why the New Testament is written in Greek, because when Alexander took over everything, he did something that was completely different that no one had ever seen before. It was called Hellenization. Most of the time when people took stuff over, they just wanted money and land. They could care less about cultural diffusion, like actually making people adopt your culture. Alexander the Great was really big on, like, he made all of his generals, they really didn't like it, his Greek generals, because he made them marry, like, Persian wives, and every time they would go conquer, they would try to assimilate the culture as best they could into their Greek culture, and it's called Hellenization, and it actually worked. That was one of the reasons why there's so many Alexandrias in the Middle East to this day, because he named so many cities after him as part of that cultural diffusion. And so when he came, he Hellenized everything. He brought the Greek culture, the Greek alphabet, the Greek language, and Greek became the universal language throughout those regions of the world. The Romans came up afterward, which are the fourth empire in Daniel's vision. And what happens is, the Romans, they did exactly what the Greeks did, but sort of. They loved the Greek culture so much, they just adopted it. They kept their Latin language, but Greek was the universal language for the Roman Empire. So the Romans themselves spoke Latin, but the whole empire, Greek was a universal language. Once again, that's why the New Testament is written in Greek. And so what ends up happening is the Romans come. Now, the Bible talks about, in the book of Daniel, this is important. I'm sorry I go off on these tangents, but like I said, it's necessary if you want to see the big picture of the gospel to put all these components together so you can see it. So what ends up happening is, in the vision that Daniel sees, he sees the toes, right? Where the feet, which are the Roman Empire. He says, eventually this kingdom's become partly strong and partly weak. If you want to know, if you're curious, eventually the Roman Empire will be divided into two sections, a western and eastern half. The western half is incredibly weak. The eastern half is incredibly strong. It says, in the day, it doesn't say this verbatim, but this is the interpretation of the prophecy. This is what it means. In the day that the Romans are going to dominate the planet, during that time period, the Bible says a stone will be cut out of a mountain without hands, meaning no hands cut this stone out of the mountain. The Bible says that the stone will smite the feet